MyStory.
MyStory.
MyStory is a place of hope and healing for all people, men, women, veterans, young adults, teenagers, and even children. Everyone, regardless of their social status or sexual orientation. It is a place of motivation and inspiration. MyStory will talk about real life situations and real life stories because no one is immune to stress, depression, anxiety, and other mental health problems, and our stories resonate. My name is Grace Ngere, Suicide Awareness and Prevention Advocate. Hello friend, how are you? I hope your day is going well. I surely do appreciate your continued support, okay? Every time you come on my story and every time you watch, every time you like, every time you share, it is very much appreciated because you and me are helping somebody out there who maybe needs a turning point in their life. And by sharing these videos, there is motivational messages, inspirational messages that can make someone maybe think not today, suicide awareness and prevention. Okay, today, this week's story, a girl come a woman who once thought she was shy is now a renowned speaker, author of 2 books. One is called Spark Back the Men in Them, In Search of Our Boys. And this one here is called In the Shadow of Masculinity, A Candid Love Letter to Men. I have read both of them and I love that title, In the Masculinity or In the Shadow of Masculinity, A Candid Love Letter to Men. You should check them out. They are really good and inspirational. So today our storyteller is Mrs. Dudek. She is a wife and a mother who has defeated so many odds by being here where she is right now. And so I welcome you to meet her as she tells us more about how she once had low self-esteem, but now she's a confident woman, a speaker, and an author, as I said. Meet Lily. Lily, what is your story?
My name is Lilian Madenge Dudek, and this is my story. I remember when I was growing up, one of the things that really blocked me from a lot of things was I suffered from very, very low self-esteem. I used to be this girl who was very, I can't say shy, maybe I can use timid, and I feared everything, and I just used to seek validation. And I would say this was caused because of, my environment. When I was young in standard 4 or 4th grade, if you may like, I was taken to boarding school. And that is where the starting of my problems, began. And I remember, when we were growing up, where in some of these schools, we were forced to speak English, and all I knew was Kikuyu. And here in this boarding school, I was put with children who had come from the city, from high-end backgrounds. And here for me, I was coming from this very simple and humble background, whereby the school I went to and I had grown speaking Kikuyu. I didn't know any better. Anyway, because of that, I couldn't express myself and I kept everything to myself, even responding, because I didn't believe I knew, because first of all, the teachers made those who didn't know how to speak or who were learning English really didn't know anything. Why? Because part of the punishment was having a mantle around your neck. It was, they used to, if you're caught or written that your name was written down that you're speaking Kikuyu, they'll give you a little curtain written, like, I am a fool, or I can't speak English, I only know Kikuyu, all those words that were really, really demeaning to a growing person. So, and don't forget this is just 10 years old. So my self-esteem, I started hating myself. I even remember one time I sneaked out of school, I sneaked out of primary school. I was now standard 5. And I just didn't want that school at all. And I felt, it was kind of prestigious to have your child in a boarding school then, those days. And so when I went home, my parents just couldn't even speak to me. They were like, you know what, they pushed me. You're now going to be staying at home, cooking for people, and we're not going to educate you. We're not going to take you to any other school. So your education has come to an end. So they also pushed me to the wall. So I had no choice but I remember it was on a Friday that I had sneaked out of school through the fence. And I walked, I remember, so many kilometers home. I had to take my shoes off and walk because I couldn't walk with shoes anymore. We didn't have mats going from the school to where I was, where we lived. So anyways, I remember this thread went on, and my parents forced me to be in a boarding school. For them, it meant good because it looked good that our daughter is in boarding school. But to me, it put me down because the more I stayed there, the more I hated communicating. And actually, to some part of my life, I started to stammer. I don't know how, but I slowed with my speech for some reason. I don't know. I actually been thinking, I thought speech delay is when you're growing up, but mine came in the middle. I didn't want to communicate, and so I kind of slowed in my speech. But then I picked up from maybe some 7, 8 there. And then to make matters worse, I was taken to a boarding secondary school, which is, a high school. Well, again, back home, we believe that, or back in Africa, we believe, it's a good thing or it's prestigious to have to go to a boarding high school. And now that even now finished me more, it made me so much kind of lose my self-worth, hate myself. And I remember myself always trying to seek validation from the other girls, because now this is high school. These are girls coming from all over the country. These are teenagers who are really hyper. Some are coming from the city. I remember we used to give them a name. I can't remember. City dwellers. Pedos. We used to call them pedos. I remember we used to call them pedoyes. And I remember myself sometimes even hiding, not wanting to go to the dormitory, not wanting to go to the preps. They used to call it the preps, the preps whereby the student could just study on their own without the teachers, because I kind of didn't feel comfortable being with people. Things got worse when I was a teenager, because I started reflecting afterwards, and I remember whenever we closed school, my parents thought I was shy, or people thought I was shy, but I didn't know, how people will go, you go interact with people in the village or in your neighborhood, you go out there to visit friends in your neighborhood. I did not have that. I always closed myself in. I didn't want to see people. I didn't want to be out there with people, because already I'd been put down so much, and I kind of felt I was in a world on my own, but nobody understood this. My parents thought maybe I was shy, and most people believed I was shy, but I knew personally I was not shy, because if I was shy, I now believe I wouldn't be doing the things I do today. I wouldn't be speaking the way I speak today. But I remember whenever even my parents used to ask me every day, are you sick? Are you okay? Simply because I would wake up in the morning, get my tea, drink my tea, help a little bit with the chores, and then go back and stay inside the house on a table. I used to have a little table where I used to sleep. Yeah, and that's where I stayed. They thought I was chopping, chopping. We used to call it chopping. They used to think maybe I'm reading, but in most cases I was not even reading. Maybe I was just there quiet, maybe looking at storybooks or doing homework if there was any. But I always locked myself. I never wanted to go anywhere. I never wanted to interact with people. And that is now home. Remember, at school I'm keeping to myself, or I'm hiding so much. When you have low self-esteem, by the way, I realized you hide so much in pleasing people. So I used to find myself in the wrong company. I used to find myself, whenever people are found maybe doing the wrong, I was always there. I was always being used by these very, very fast students. Those who know, I used to be there, kind of recruited, and I used to be, okay, yes, let's go, everything, yes, let's go. So then I realized then, when I was home, there was no one to associate with. So I chose to just keep to myself. So that affected me a lot, and it made me at some point really hate myself and felt so low about myself, but well, I outgrew that, and that trend went on and went on, even further in life. When I got into relationships, I realized I was always seeking validation. I was just seeking validation from other people, and I realized I was hurting myself, and so I had to make up my mind. But before we go on how I made up my mind, I remember one time I was working, actually I went into working as a UT, and as a UT, I remember my teachers that I was working with. I went to work in one of these big schools in the city. I will not mention the school right now, but I met teachers who've been trained, who have more years of experience, teachers who are married, coming from big backgrounds, teachers who are driving to school. And so I was put in I would say I put myself, because I looked for the job, and I put myself in this big world, and I remember most teachers, I taught English and CRE and some other subject, science. And I remember teachers used to use me as well, By the way, if you lack self-esteem, what I've realized, even adults will use you a lot. At your workplace, most people will even take advantage of you, because you'll say yes every time. And I was this person. I was always saying yes, I can do this. To an extent, I realized things were not really going on the right way when I used to teach English. I hated Swahili. I didn't know any Swahili, but this teacher just came and gave me inches to mark, like 100 of them on a weekend. Hey, Lillian, you wanna go mark these inches for me? And I had a pile of compositions to mark, because we're trying to compile exams for, I think, either midterm or end of term. And guess what? I had to make sure I finished her inches before my composition. That's when I realized something has to be done. I had to really do something. And so I worked towards quitting environments that were really putting me into situations that could make me hate myself, feel low of myself, seek validations. And well, I came out of it, and I thank God, because out of that, I was able to pursue and become the person I am today. I became so confident that sometimes I stand up and say stuff, I'm like, oh, did that come from me? I realized that there was a lot of talent. There were so many good things hidden in me that I did not believe in, because I always seeked for the next, I always waited for the next opinion, or for the people's opinion. So, so I have been there. I have suffered very low self-esteem. I used to hate myself. I used to feel like I'm a nobody. I really don't mean anything to anyone, until later in life, when I was an adult, I realized I had to do something about it if I was to live, if I was to live in my full potential, if I was to meet my purpose in life. I had to change a lot of things. I had to change my environment. Honestly, I had even to quit communicating with a lot of people. That is who are subjecting me into not believing in myself. And beyond that, I also avoided attending places I am not celebrated. I also avoided attending places I didn't feel valued. I stopped participating where I feel my energy is not rhyming. I started attending where I feel my energy was only in sync with the people that I know I am going to interact with. And when I feel the energy is not rhyming, that I'm not in sync with it, I have up to date always quit and left. So I'm glad that I have become the woman I was created to become today. And I thank God, because up to date, I'm one person who speak up my mind. I say no with no apologies. My yes is always a yes. And if it's a no, I always don't explain my no's, and I feel comfortable about it because I don't want to do things to hurt me. Those days I used to do things that could hurt me. Why? Because I used to impress. I wanted to say just a yes, just not to make, even though it didn't mean good for me, I said it to make the person asking for the offer or for me to do certain things to make them happy. But then certain things left me hurting, you know. So, but I've realized I have outgrown that now. I have become this person who knows when it's a yes, when it's a no, and when to put the limit and where to draw the lines. So, and I am happy of the person I have become, very confident. I walk in a room feeling this is where I belong. And if I feel this is not where I belong, I have no second guess. I just walk out. So yeah, anybody can come out of it. Anybody can actually grow out of low self-esteem. I was there. It is not a good feeling because it takes away your self-worth. You put yourself, you know, and beyond that, you feel like the world is against you every time because you feel you're not representing your mind in the right way. I never used to represent myself. I never used to represent my mind. I waited for the people's opinions. I waited for the people's suggestions. But today, I am a changed person. I made up my mind. No, this is not working for me. I have to go for what really worked for me. And what worked for me was the environment that I started placing myself into. So, yeah. So that is it. Anybody can get out of it. I am now a very confident woman. If confidence was to be a name, that would have been my second name.